This is episode 5 in our series about food companies getting sued. First up, we have PepsiCo is potentially in trouble for allegedly deceptively marketing and labelling their Gatorade Protein Bars. The suit claims that the bars are promoted as healthful, protein-rich fitness aids.
Gatorade Bars. Never let hunger get in the way of your game.
The label says 20 grams of protein, and the box says protein to help muscles rebuild. But they also contain added sugars. If we take a look at the nutrition information panel, we can see that one serve is 80 grams or a whole bar. And there is indeed 20 grams of protein, just like they said. But there's also 10 grams of fat, 8 grams of which is saturated fat, which is the type of fat you want to avoid, and there is 27 grams of sugar, which is more sugar than there is in a Snickers bar. The World Health Organization recommends that we reduce our sugar intake, particularly added sugars, so this bar is not going to help with that. And if you're trying to lose weight when you're exercising, eating this protein bar is just going to undo that. You're taking in so much extra energy. As far as the protein content in it, most Australians and Americans, we eat enough protein in our diet as is. We don't need to fortify it and add more. But if you really did want to get an extra 20 grams of protein without all the extra sugar and all the extra fat, you could take 70 grams of lean skinless chicken and you would have 20 grams of protein, or 5 egg whites cooked up, also very low in fat and has 20 grams of protein. The real question for the court case, though, is the labelling and marketing of this bar as a protein bar going to mislead consumers into thinking that it's healthy and it's good for you? What do you think? If something is labelled as a protein bar, do you automatically assume that it's healthy? Or do you, like me, flip it over and read the nutrition information panel and make an informed decision for yourself? I'm not quite sure if this one's going to win because they do actually even say the amount of sugar per bar on the front of the box, so you'd really have to be trying to ignore everything to not realise how much sugar you were going to take with this one. Moving on, next, McDonald's. Now, McDonald's has a history of suing other people when it comes to infringing on their trademarks. Now, being a big company, of course, they have a lot of trademarks, ones you'd expect like all of their logos. But as well as that, they've got a lot of what is called word trademarks, which is where they've registered the actual words. It doesn't matter what font or colours or logo is associated with it. You can't use these words if you're a restaurant or for whatever purposes they've registered it for. Now, some of these you're going to recognise, things like Happy Meal, Egg McMuffin. Then there's ba-da-ba-ba-ba. And there's also a whole heap of more general word phrases that I was surprised were registered because I would have thought other restaurants would have been able to use these as well. Things like cold days, hot deals, daily double, big breakfast. How can they have that trademarked? It seems way too general. But they've also trademarked Mc. So if you're thinking of starting a cafe or a restaurant or having a food item on your menu that starts with Mc or Mac, you may want to think again because McDonald's might come after you. In Half Moon Bay, Ms. McCoffee decided to start her cafe and she called it McCoffee, a play on her name. Now, after she'd been in operation for 17 years, McDonald's found out about it and their lawyers sent her a letter saying that she was in breach of their trademark because she'd used Mc in the name of her cafe. Now, rather than fight it in court, she just changed the name of her cafe to M Coffee instead. In the Philippines, the restaurant McJoy was told that they couldn't use the prefix Mac. Now, they decided to fight it in court, but McDonald's won, so they had to redo all their signage and all their branding and change it to My Joy instead. Norman MacDonald ran his country drive-in for 20 years before McDonald's decided to take him to court. Now, he had a partial win because his actual name is McDonald, so he was still allowed to use it, but he had to add his first name as well to say Norman MacDonald Country Drive-In. Now, I don't know about you, but even if this just said McDonald, I am not going to confuse that with McDonald's. But there have been so many cases of McDonald's taking restaurants to court over this sort of thing. There was McChina Walkaway in London, McMunchies in Scotland, it was a sandwich shop, and Macallan hot dog stand. They even took him to court as well. Now, lawyers might seem very overzealous in the protection of their trademarks in this case, but in reality, if they don't protect their trademarks once they know that someone's using it, then they can lose the right to then take people to court over that at a later date. I think more the issue here is, why were they ever given the trademark for Mc? Nearly 50 years ago, Pat McDonough in Ireland decided to open a fast food restaurant. And despite his name being McDonough, he didn't call his restaurants that. He instead called them SuperMac, which was his friend's nickname for him from football in high school. Fast forward 35 years and there were more than 100 SuperMacs across Ireland. It was doing extremely well. So he looked into expanding and he filed a trademark application for the name of his store and also his menu items in the EU. Now, McDonald's opposed his application, saying the name SuperMac was too similar to their trademarked words Big Mac, and because of that, his application was denied. And on top of that, 1 week later, McDonald's filed for the word snack box to be trademarked. Now, McDonald's doesn't have a menu item called snack box, but SuperMac does. Pat saw this as a big company trying to bully smaller companies by hoarding trademarks, and he was not going to stand for it. Now, in the EU, if you register a trademark but then you don't use it for a period of 5 years, you can lose that trademark. And in the case of the word mark for Big Mac, they had that registered for chicken burgers, meat burgers, and restaurant names. But they hadn't used it as a restaurant name. So Pat filed an application with the EU Intellectual Property Office to argue that point. Now, somehow the McDonald's lawyers stuffed up this case completely and failed to bring enough evidence to prove that they used the term Big Mac at all for burgers, for anything. So they lost the right to the trademark Big Mac for everything, which you and I both know that they have Big Macs. It's on their menu, it's in their adverts. They just needed to show that in court. So they appealed it, of course, and showed all the evidence and the sales data and everything they needed to do to prove that they were using that word mark. And so that decision was overturned, which was good for McDonald's but bad for Pat, because now the Big Mac over restaurants was still an issue. So he appealed that to the General Court, and they agreed with him that McDonald's should be able to keep the word mark for burgers but lose it for restaurants because they weren't using it for restaurants. So that was a big win for SuperMac, and that meant he could keep the name of his restaurant as is. Moving on to Thermomix. 7 years ago, they were fined $4.6 million for breaching Australian consumer law. Now, here in Australia, if you sell a product and then consumers let you know that that product has injured them, you have to inform the government. You only have 2 days to tell them. And the reason for that is so the government can keep an eye on, is this a once-off thing or is this something that we need to recall? Are more people going to get injured? In the case of Thermomix, there were 87 separate cases of people getting burnt. And each time they told the person that it was their fault. It was user error. It was not the machine. There was nothing wrong with the machine. And if anybody asked for a refund, they told them they had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which is also not legal. You don't have to sign a non-disclosure to get a refund on a faulty product. And later, when it eventually was recalled, they said if a speed of 4 or above is selected and then it's immediately switched to the lid open position, the lid may quickly release and liquid or food may escape from the mixing bowl. And the user needed to replace a green sealing ring in the product every 2 years. Customers, however, told quite a different story, saying that their Thermomix lid started to wriggle towards the open position when it was in operation even after they purchased a brand new green sealing ring. And if they didn't notice that it was doing that and it actually came open, it just sent hot liquid flying everywhere, which is what resulted in the burns.
Thermomix says the safety, welfare and support of their customers is and always has been their highest priority.
Now fast forward 5 years, when Thermomix was having issues with their newer TM6 model, they at least seemed to have learnt the lesson that they can't just keep it a secret. There were 37 incidences of people getting burns from an issue with the measuring cup lid. So they issued a warning that said, the use of the Thermomix TM6 measuring cup during cooking, simmering or heating at temperatures of 95 or 200 F and above may lead to a sudden and uncontrolled spillage of hot food and can cause scalding burns. The measuring cup on the TM6 is designed so that steam from the mixing bowl can escape. You can see there's lots of gaps here. But if you turn it over, then the lid fits quite snugly. It's actually quite tight 3/4 of the way around. There is a gap on that last quarter where the steam is supposed to escape, and that works quite well if you're just boiling water. But if you're boiling something that is a bit thicker, like a sauce, these steam vents can get blocked. Now, to get this lid off needs quite a bit of pressure and force, which means by the time the steam has built up to be able to apply that much pressure, you're going to get liquid bursting out with it as well. Now, generally, if a product has something that is faulty, like the design of this lid, then it would be a requirement of the brand to recall and replace the faulty item in order to stop anybody else getting injured. Now, in this case, Thermomix did do a recall, but not of the measuring cup. They did a recall on the instruction booklet. I am not joking. They decided to change the instruction booklet so that now it says, if you were boiling or simmering, don't use the measuring cup, use the simmering basket on top instead. When the TM6 was advertised, it didn't have a simmering basket on top of it, and it said this:
the best part? It gets better and better all by itself. Smart at heart.
And if you do one of those wonderful updates on your machine, instead of telling you to use the measuring cup in the middle of your lid, it now tells you to use the steamer basket instead. That's a bit like selling a teapot that when it boils the lid flies off, and instead of recalling the lid, they just tell you to put a colander on top instead and call that an upgrade. You'd be hard pressed to find anybody who thought this was a good solution.
I really don't like it. The last thing I want to have to do is continuously wash my steamer basket. It's big, it's bulky. So to overcome this problem, I would like to introduce you to my splash cap. We just have this little splash cap here, which sits in the top.
If consumers have to actually design their own replacement part for something that was faulty and a safety issue on an appliance, surely that is not okay. I have no idea how they got away with just recalling the instruction manual. On a side note, if you live in Canada, it's actually illegal for you to sell a product that has been recalled. So if you have a Thermomix TM6 and you want to sell it, make sure you don't include the instruction manual because that could be dangerous. Next, if you're a regular, you will know that a little while ago we did an episode on the dangers of taking too many vitamins. If you live in Australia and you've had any of those side effects from having too much vitamin B6 in particular, then there's a potential class action that you might like to get involved in, and I'll put a link to the website that will give you more information about that below. With thanks to my amazing patrons for all of your support, and thanks to all of you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please do like, share, comment, subscribe, or become a patron so that more people get to see the channel. Make it a great week by being kind to others, and I'll see you on Friday.